It was a friend of mine who I was at her house with a bunch of people, and she is, I guess, the person that started me off on recognising what I went through, because it was just me and her. We were together. Then other people came and I was different. And she said to me, "You're different when other people come around." And that's when it really occurred to me, well, it's the mask I put on. It's the acting face. It's the musician. I can pretend to be something and hide the real me underneath. And so because she was my friend, that's when I said it to her, because she recognised what I was doing, that I was completely unaware that I even did that in the first place.
Welcome to Conversations with Kristi. I'm Kristi McVie, a former WA police officer, specialist child interviewer and child abuse detective. For years, I worked on the front lines investigating child sexual abuse, where I saw the risks, the patterns, and most importantly, the ways that we can protect our kids. Now I'm here to share that knowledge with you. This podcast is all about real conversations, giving parents, carers, and educators the tools to keep their kids safe, both in person and online. Through survivor stories, expert insights, and practical advice, we'll navigate these tough topics together so you feel informed, confident, and empowered. Because when we know better, we can do better, and our kids deserve nothing less. Content warning. Some topics and conversations can be triggering for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised, as your mental health is important. Please refer to my website and the show notes for available support services. Hello and welcome back to the Conversations with Kristi podcast. I am super excited to be with Kerri Sloper. Kerri, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. We connected through LinkedIn. I find all of my podcast friends on LinkedIn, and it's so lovely to meet people like yourself who have written books for kids, because I've got a book for parents, but we are lacking in children's books around the topics of child sexual abuse and online child abuse and all of the things that we're going through. And you've written actually 4 books now about your own lived experience, but also about the topic. So before I say too much about you, how about you tell listeners a little bit about yourself and, what you do and how you got to this space of sharing your story through kids' books?
All right. Well, I'm a musician. I have 14 instruments, so just a few. And I've been teaching. I worked it out for 40 years, which is a very long time. I got my first job in 1985 while I was still a student at Whopper. And obviously I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and it started very young when I was 4, and it continued until I was 9 when the abuser moved away.
Okay.
And then I ignored it for a very long time.
As we tend to do.
Yeah. And then a long time ago, I can't remember exactly when, but I wrote the poem for this book.
The White Canvas it's called right.
And then one day when I was at school, a friend of mine, I shared it with her, and she said to me, "You need to put that in a book." And when she did, I found an illustrator who's in Spain through my niece, and she illustrated it, and it was interesting, the backwards and forwards of ideas, because I also like art myself, and I did ATAR art, and so I had to do a storyboard, send it to her, and then she sent it back, and I'd say yes, no, change this, change that, or I want you to add that in, or whatever. So it's a bit of toing and froing and a language barrier.
Yeah.
And then finally, it was released, and I was really happy with it. So I had a book launch with the support of the current principal of the school that I work at. She's been a great advocate, supporting me and encouraging me to go ahead with it.
Yeah.
And then I discovered, I thought I would be finished with one, but then I realised there was different parts to my healing journey that I felt could benefit children, because that's really what my game is. Well, my goal is to help adult survivors can relate to these books, as can children.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's interesting. In the last book launch, there was a lady there who was 80, and she came up to me and she she basically at my book launch confessed to her daughter that she had been abused and had never spoken of it before. And then I've had the daughter of a sexual abuse survivor who's had a difficult childhood because of the trauma her mother went through. And she's related to the books as well. And I've heard heaps from just my stories, those who come read them because they're true. And it was interesting. I did have one person say, you need to make this more culturally relatable to other cultures. And I said, but it's my story.
Yeah.
And that's my truth. And that's why, even though, yes, you could look on it as a fictional book, it's actually not fictional. It's actually true. It's actually my story. And that, I think, is what people can relate to. More than anything else.
Yeah, and I've I got a copy of the books so that I could have them for my own library and to share with parents. And as I read through them all, first of all, I got to hand it to you, like poems and rhyming, amazing, well done, because I am useless and hopeless at those sorts of things. Like I can write, but I'm a conversational writer, and whereas you have just done a beautiful job in putting this into rhyming and to make it sort of flow, and they do work, and the pictures are amazing, the graphics or the illustrations are amazing as well. And I did notice you had the same illustrator on all 4 books. But not only that, you sort of told your story in a way that's sort of like, here's me before, here's me whilst it was happening, here's me after, and here's me now as an adult helping kids. And all of the stories have that flow about them, which is the perfect way to explain to kids, right? We don't want to end on a bad or sour note, because it's not something kids or anyone wants to read. But at the same time, that's, you through what you're doing is exactly that. You were, 4 years old when this started. So of course, before that, everything is, well, you're a baby, you're a child, and you're doing what you do. And then, through the motion of it happening to when it stops, to then you trying to go on that healing process. And now you, this amazing musician with, all of these amazing talents, but also now sharing your story to help other people and to help children, because these books are designed for children, in order to understand it. And the one thing that came to mind is that there's a lot of parents out there that don't know how to help their kids through their abuse. They don't know how to talk about it, and they don't know how to, help them relate to someone else. And what came to mind was, how amazing are these books to help kids understand what they've been through as well, and that there is hope.
That's my purpose. And of course, I have had people who pity me, and I really don't like that at all. And, you'll never be normal. What's normal? They put limits up because of what happened to you as a child. And I'm like, no,
I don't buy into that.
True. I've never been into substance abuse or any of that. I've never I found healthy coping strategies, which was music.
Yes, I can see that.
And that really helped me, because you can wander off and you don't have to think about anything. And I was obsessed. I practiced 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and probably people were questioning your passion in music, but your music was your outlet. The music was your release. Music was your healer.
Yeah, and writing poetry, because I've written probably in excess of 50 poems, but I'm really proud of these and the thing is, speaking out is what healed me. And I never thought that would, because it was very frightening. The very first book, when I shared this with my friend, mentor, Julie, she shared it with the senior leadership team, and then they would say things like, oh, you're brave. And I thought, no, I don't want to be told I'm brave. I was uncomfortable with being brave. But she was right. And with each book, I've got stronger. But I've also felt the 4 is it. That's all. It tells everything. This one is my questions.
Yeah.
Why? Why me? Why so long? Why didn't anybody listen? Because I did speak out, but I wasn't given the right words. And that may be a generational thing. I think we're far more aware now than we used to be.
Yeah, 100%.
And then this one is, there is a price to pay. Yeah. And it is a heavy price, and I pay for it every day. It's a lot less than it used to be. But there are still triggers.
Yeah.
And this book I wrote because of a friend of mine who I've assisted, who discovered that her 3 daughters were sexually abused by their father. And I wrote it because I was very angry for a long time at the fact that I spoke out. I said, don't leave me with him, he hurts us, all of that sort of thing. Nobody listened. And then as I progressed through my healing, I realised that I'm not the only victim. Anyone who believes a perpetrator is a victim because they're a victim of lies. And the thing about this that I didn't know, when I spoke to my husband after writing it, he said, Kerri, do you realise what pedophiles are called in prison? And I said, no. And he said, they're called rock spiders. Well, I didn't know that when I wrote this.
Yeah.
I had no idea. But, and this one is the one I think that is the most powerful for me.
Yeah.
Because in realising that anyone who believes the perpetrator is a victim, and I'm being kind by saying that because I was angry for a long time about not being believed about because when I told my father and my mother, my mother believed me straight away. My father did for a day, and then he couldn't handle it, wanted to ignore it and pretended that I wasn't telling the truth. And obviously I've made peace with him. He's no longer, both my parents are gone now, but I was mad. I was really angry. But then I came to a place where I realised that if you believe a pedophile over a child, then you're a victim too because you're a victim of lies. And when you actually come to that realisation, which may take a couple of days, more than likely a couple of years or more, how bad will you feel when you realise that you actually contributed to the pain of an abuse victim because you didn't believe them? And so that's why this book came about, because I wanted that message and I wanted people to forgive themselves if they didn't believe a child straight away so that the child can have their family. They don't have to lose everything. They lost their innocence. They lost their, a lot. Why should they lose their family as well?
Yeah, and I think, it sounds to me like writing that one was probably the biggest. I guess you had some epiphanies, you had some moments of clarity where you were able to see not only from your perspective of that hurt child, that abandoned child in a way, but also from the side of the person, your dad or your family, who was also a victim of being lied to and manipulated and, groomed as well. So the thing is that, yes, in some cases, your dad and your mum believed you, but your dad was struggling with that. He was a victim of the fact that he possibly didn't know how to deal with it, and so therefore he buried his head in the sand. And that's, a lot of people do that, unfortunately, and we wonder why. But one of the reasons why they do that is because they are struggling to comprehend how big of a problem this is. And when we know something, we have to do something, right? So
yep, totally.
And sometimes we don't know what to do, so we just ignore it and we try and get on with it. And I've been on the side of, parents who have done everything they could and parents who've done nothing. And I've seen both sides, and it's all traumatic no matter what. So it can be traumatic healing, traumatic, it's not great. So great, but yeah.
It froze then.
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it can be very traumatic for just everyone involved. And you're right. When parents don't act, yes, you do lose them in a way. And in a sense, sometimes in the physical way that we lose them, and then we lose them in that connection that we had, and now we don't have that anymore. Do you think did you feel angry as a child, or did you only feel angry once you remembered and you were processing what had happened to you?
I never forgot. I always remembered. I always detested the person. I ignored or pushed it to the back, and I didn't recognise it as being childhood sexual abuse until I grew up old enough to understand what that actually meant. And then, of course, what I went through wasn't basic either. And yeah, it was interesting. It was a friend of mine who I was at her house with a bunch of people, and she is, I guess, the person that started me off on recognising what I went through, because it was just me and her. We were together. Then other people came and I was different. And she said to me, you're different when other people come around. And that's when when it really occurred to me, well, it's the mask I put on. It's the acting face. It's the musician. It's I can pretend to be something and hide the real me underneath. And so because she was my friend, that's when I said it to her, because she recognised what I was doing, that I was completely unaware that I even did that in the first place. And I'm sure that that's not uncommon.
No, it's not. Definitely not.
So that's when, you know, and I think that's with music. I've been able to act confident and people think I'm an extrovert and you do this and that, when actual fact I'm not.
It's gone for that short period or that period of time, however long, and you're able to pretend, you know, that, you know, you're this confident, bubbly person that can play anywhere, do anything and wow the crowd kind of thing, you know, and that's a mask and that's something we do. I mean, look, I wore a mask as a police officer. People think that I must have been really confident. I'm one of and people I stand on stages. It's like a practice. We practice these things to look confident, you know, fake it till you make it. It used to be my favorite saying. And, you know, survivors do that. Childhood survivors, that children do that as well. You know, they put on that mask to pretend because that's what's expected or that's what's easiest, that's what's safest. And then when they feel safe, they can take it off. So yeah, I can see where that would have been. So how old were you when that happened?
I was probably late teens. And then I only told my parents when I was 27.
Yeah.
And I know, which is quite a long time.
Well, did you know the average, you're right in the average there, because did you know the average is 24 years for women? Disclosing abuse. So, you know, you're in the average of taking about, I mean, it started at 4. So, you know, you're 27, you're almost 24 years. You're not almost right in there.
Yep. Well, I remember my mum, the first thing she said was, now I understand why you hated him. So immediately things came to mind and there were neon signs for my mum, but she didn't go there.
Again, when you face things like that, you have to take action, don't you? You have to put in, and I guess, you know, our generation, I grew up in the 80s, you were probably a little bit more. Yeah.
I'm
so,
a
you know,
65 baby.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? Like that, I mean, when you said you've been doing music for 40 years, I was like, or teaching music for 40 years, I was like, yeah, we're dialing back that, you know, that dial a little bit. No, yeah. And I mean, the thing about it is that, you know, your mum's generation, not that it's an excuse, but your mum's generation, they didn't talk about it. They didn't do anything about it. We pretend it doesn't happen. We're not going to, you don't rock the boat, and you don't. And, you know, it's such a shame. It's such a shame that she didn't do anything back then. It's such a shame. But that's why we're doing what we're doing, Kerri. Like, that's why you're creating these books for survivors and for children. And that's why we're talking about it. And that's what we're doing. We're empowering a new generation of people to talk out and to heal themselves so that their kids don't end up in that situation as well.
Well, that's the sad thing. Both my parents were sexually abused as children. So it's intergenerational.
It always is.
But I feel like I've broken it for my children, and I wanted to break it. And the biggest thing for me is I want people who survived the worst thing that can happen to a child to have a happy, good life, to not feel like that can tarnish the rest of their life. It doesn't have to.
I agree. 100%.
And it's hard, but it doesn't have to tarnish your whole life.
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about, like, your abusers, obviously, you know, your parents, you told them at 27. And when did you start writing the white canvas? Because you said it was your friend. Was that back when you were a teenager or as you grew? Because it was released in 2022. So there you go. That's when you got that one out into the world. You birthed that baby.
I have my poetry. Tawny, do you want to go get...
it's okay.
There's a black folder in that room. Yeah, my daughter, she's here.
Oh, hello, daughter.
I wrote it years ago, and I shared it with Mum, and Mum liked it. But the original poem alludes to who the abuser is, so I had to take it out.
Yeah.
make it more generic, for want of a better word.
Yeah, because, and I know that we talked briefly about it, you know, in most cases today, Kerri, a lot of people aren't able to identify who their abuser is because of, you know, legalities and stuff like that, regardless of where it is in the process or whatever. And that can sometimes really throw people, that they can't say something about who did this to them. You know, again, you're doing a wonderful job of healing without having that out. But you don't need to, well, some people do, but some people don't need to like share who it is. It's just about sharing the fact that it happened, and it did happen, and it's your story.
Well, the biggest thing for me, like once upon a time, I used to think, because people talk about forgiveness and forgiving the abuser and whatever, and that used to kind of make me angry and frustrated.
Yeah.
And because I am Christian, but I used to think that unless I had justice,
Yes,
or whatever, that I was stopped from healing.
it was
And
holding
so
you up.
that's the biggest thing, is why these books came about, is I have realised he's irrelevant. I don't need to forgive him. I don't need to give him airtime. And I don't need him to feel whole or
Yes.
like patched up, for want of a better word.
You can heal without all of that.
Yes. And
Beautiful.
I feel like that is empowering, and letting go is much better than going down the justice vindication path.
Yeah.
And I think more often than not, you won't get justice. And if you do, it won't actually be justice, because what justice is there when you've had your childhood taken from you? There isn't any justice. No amount of penalty in prison, whatever, can give it back. It's been taken for good forever. And
what it sounds like is you came to the realization that healing is an internal journey, and it's an internal, like, not forgiving, that's not even the word. It's an internal thing that only you can do for yourself. Would you agree?
Yes. Okay, it was 2004.
Oh, wow.
It was
so 18 years you were thinking about it before you actually got it out into the world.
Yeah, which is a long time. The others, not so. They were after. So the first book came out, and then
and then
then I wrote the questions,
and then you're on the roll. So then you thought, let's do this one. Yeah, I've got more. My book it took 2 years, and that's apparently very short for writing a book. Apparently books can be a very long process, but when I wrote my book, I did it in 2 years, and then now I get ideas for more books, and it's like, hang on a second, I don't have 2 years to write another book. I don't think it would take me as long. I think the first one is the hardest one.
Yeah. Yeah, the others all flowed and really
made it easier.
I knew the title and would let it mull in my mind. And then when I actually wrote the poem, like for instance, this one I wrote in 10 minutes.
The cover up, yeah, right.
Yeah. So
with your books, and this is a question I think parents would want to know, is what age do you think your books are appropriate for? I know that we talked about it briefly beforehand, but say, for instance, The White Canvas, which is all about how special children are and how they've got this blank canvas starting out, and then, everything that happens can, from that moment, it's so, I got to say, I'm really impressed with how the words plus the actual illustrations are so beautifully done. Like, I must say, they're really great. They definitely flow, and they definitely have, like, they captured me. So I've got to give you that credit, because that's a really well done. But for instance, what age do you think The White Canvas could be spoken to with children? And do you think that, so this is a 2-part question, and do you think that these books are appropriate for kids who haven't, both children who haven't been abused and then for children who have? Like,
I think as soon as you start talking to your children about like child protective behaviours, which I think is good touching and bad touching, I think you can introduce The White Canvas then. And that's just what I what I think.
Yeah. I mean, some of us in this space talking, because I've been teaching body safety to my daughter since she was 2 years old, and nothing was off limits in our conversations, because I saw when I went to work every day, that children are, children are abused in every family type, part of the world, every culture, every religion, everywhere. And so for me, I didn't want my daughter to be blindsided by someone tricking her into something and to making her believe that, whatever. So so I believe that you're right. I think if you're talking body safety and you're teaching your kids about appropriate and inappropriate, safe and unsafe, secrets and surprises, and, the correct terminology and all of the body autonomy and everything, then the theme of the white canvas is about, it's a story that can be relatable for any topic, really.
Yep. Bullying.
Yeah.
Gender. This one, when you mention all cultures.
Yeah.
So this was, my idea for this one was paper dolls. You remember when you fold the paper,
you
draw a doll and you cut it out.
And then you colour all the different people in?
So, yes. So this is big me healing little me.
Yeah.
With all the children of the world.
Yeah, with all different cultures, beliefs, everything.
Yeah, skin tones, everything.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's really, I think you're right, like that. I love that you did that. That was on purpose, I can tell.
Yeah, it was. All of the illustrations I thought of and put together and had her realise. Like there is another one. Let me see if I can find it. What it refers to. This one.
With the shadow of you,
so
little
this
you
is
and
little
big you?
me, and that's her hero. Like, do you know what I mean? Like her being big.
Yeah, standing up for herself.
Yeah, every illustration was in my mind. And then this one, of course, me being a detective.
Yeah, the clues.
Yeah, the clues.
Yeah. So with your other books, so that was the white canvas, and then you've got the why inside, the questions. That was the where you got the clues from. Again, this is about the why, because you had so many questions inside. And I'd imagine any child who goes through child sexual abuse is asking, why me?
Yep.
Any survivor or lived experience survivor or someone who's lived through this is thinking, why me? Why? What did I do? Why did this happen to me? And that's all of these, I think. If you're a teacher or if you're someone who works with children in this space, I think it would be the perfect kind of like, what came to me is if you had a little group of kids, you could read these books to them, or they could read them, and then they could go and do some form of like, what did you get? What was the message you were getting out of here? Because all of these have a message of hope at the end of it.
Yep. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right.
All of them have a message of hope where they talk about, that we can be safe, that we can be, they're all got that at the very end of it, or that you've healed and that you can heal and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the best things about these books is, it's a hard and sad topic, but you've done a really good job of the ways that you have described it. So I think you did a really good job. Do you have you've said that these 4 books are it?
I think so I think if I write anything else, like I've got a friend, like I could write from someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
In my healing journey, each message is separate. The white canvas is the overall thing.
Yeah.
The questions are my questions. The price, well, that's ongoing.
Yeah.
And
the cost that it costs a child is what the price is about.
And the cover up is basically to help parents of children forgive themselves. Because if you've become aware that that's going on in your family, like this one, I'm saying be a hero to your own children and other children, which is why the adults are there, again, from different cultures. You have to forgive yourself and heal. To heal your child successfully, you have to forgive yourself too.
Yeah, you can't hold I mean, look, I think forgiveness is one of these things where you can't forgive if you're not standing in your integrity and doing the right things, for instance, and you're continuing to perpetuate that harm, then you can't forgive yourself, because you're going to have to keep forgiving yourself along the way. So you've got to obviously if it's happening right now, you have to stop it. You
Yeah,
can't
you
allow
stop
it to
it,
continue.
which is why
But
you become a hero. Ultimately, like that's why this is last. And I had to work through a lot of anger
yeah, you
to
said
get
that.
to the point of that book, to make it, to produce it in a way, because I've seen even in my own family, people get stuck on being angry. And it doesn't hurt the perpetrator, it hurts you.
Yeah.
And but that's a big hurdle. And I think that is the final hurdle that abuse survivors have to come to some measure of to feel peace.
Well, and you pointed it out that it's an internal thing that you have to do. Otherwise, you're like it, it's like, and I've heard this saying before, anger and anger is like taking a pill, like a poisonous pill, and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
It's like it just takes over so much energy and space and time. And I'm not saying, they don't deserve to be held accountable or that they don't deserve to be, you don't have the right to be angry, but at some point you're going to have to let go. Hopefully you'll realize you have to let go of the anger. Otherwise it's poisoning you.
Yes, that's my point.
Yeah.
Not just for the victim, but the whole family, anyone who knows. And it's a hard thing to do. It's very hard, and it took me a very long time.
Yeah, when you spoke to your parents about it at like 27, did they, and obviously it made sense to your mum, she was like, now I understand, it makes so much sense. And you know that you've told your parents. Did they ever come to any sort of like resolution with you, or to like say sorry for not listening back then, or did that not get an
No.
opportunity to have those conversations?
Not for a very, very, very long time, because the person was close to the family, that was hard for them.
Even then at 27.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
it's such a tricky road to navigate,
yeah, it is. And it was very difficult for them for a long time. But I did, once the police got involved, and a policeman was sent over from Victoria to come and interview me. And I gave one statement, and then I gave a second statement. Each of them took 6 hours. It's a very long time.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Oh, and then, so, it's been a really long, long road. And the funny thing is, like, you have to be ready for each stage of your healing journey.
Otherwise, it's going to go, you're going to bypass it and keep spiraling until you're ready again.
And I guess now, like when I've seen others, I can tell where they're at now, because I've gone through that hard bit and I'm through the other side. Am I perfectly healed? Probably not. It'll be a lifelong pursuit, but I can see where they're at or where they're stuck. But I can't hurry it up for them. But that's why I feel like my books can help the process.
Yes.
Especially if you get it to children young enough.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like it can help them overcome those stages in hopefully quicker, hopefully with some acceptance, recognition.
You just never know sometimes. Like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll hear a song, or I'll see something written, or I'll see a meme or something, right? And it feels like it's literally speaking to me.
Yeah.
There's a certain song right now that I'm listening to that was suggested to me, and it's like it's speaking to my soul, and every time I listen to it, I almost tear up. And so, like, I think you writing those books, who knows which child has that read to them or reads it themselves, or what adult or parent reads it for their child and then realizes actually that's, it's speaking to them.
Yeah.
You just don't know. You just don't know what piece of like art or music or whatever, or poem or story will actually reach the person. And that's not for us to know, is it, when we create this stuff?
But that's why I wrote them, and why I'm just, well, I shouldn't say just, but I'm a musician, I'm a teacher, I'm a mother. I don't really know how to spread my message. I appreciate you giving me the time to help spread my message of hope and healing to others, because that's really why I wrote them.
Well, and it's already worked because, you know, you had that grandmother come up to you and she said, and, you know, another person, and the one thing I know from all of the time that I've been doing this, you know, nearly 15 years of talking to victim survivors and people who have been through or had something happen to them, is that the more we talk about it, the more we allow other people to have the courage to talk about it. There's something so powerful in that, and there's something so amazing in that. Again, like, we talk about it and it's reducing the stigma, it's reducing the pain, it's reducing and it's helping the healing for more people than we realise.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. And it might be a slow burn, but that's fine. I know I've helped a lot of people.
Yeah, I think you'll continue to. These books will be there forever.
I hope so, because I think I've sold over 300 now, and hopefully they'll get into the hands of anyone,
the right people,
who needs it. I know the Victorian Police have them in their sexual assault building.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I'm hopeful that I've tried in Perth, but, you know, some people look on someone who's been abused as a bit weird.
Well, they're not. They have their moments, and we all have our moments. Doesn't matter what, you know, like, it's not that you're weird. You've gone through something. I think one of the things, Kerri, is to just keep promoting, keep speaking, keep sharing. You know, I will be promoting these on my page, and, you know, I will be sharing these, and, you know, and I get questions all the time. I've had questions from parents. My daughter's going through, you know, these are some of the questions I've had. My daughter's going through recovery from being abused, and I don't know what is there anything she can read? Is there anything that you can suggest? And so I will now have this tool, these books to suggest, because, and if you're a parent out there and your child has been through this, or you've been through this, I would suggest getting these books just so that you've got something in your toolbox. Kerri, my last question for you was around, you know, you've got so much experience in this space because you're a parent, you're a musician, you're a teacher, but you're also a survivor. What would you suggest? Because this podcast is for parents and for carers and for people who care about talking about this stuff with kids. What would your suggestion be to parents in, you know, how to obviously prevent child sexual abuse, but also how to support their kids in any abuse disclosure?
Trust your instincts. Children, you need to be able to communicate with your child and for them to feel safe enough to tell you. And when they tell you, believe them, and then try to put something in place to make them feel safe. Because I know when I told my parents, I minimised it first, and I minimised it to protect them.
Yeah, you knew this person was close to them, and you knew that it would hurt them, so you were making it smaller than it was because you didn't want to hurt them.
I didn't want my parents to feel like they were a failure.
And that's you at 9 or 5, you know, between 4 and 9. Like, this is a little person with big thoughts and big feelings. That's an adult thought, not a child thought, but that's what child sexual abuse does. It makes you grow up and makes you be responsible for things that you shouldn't be responsible for.
Well, I also think that parts of you grow up and parts of you are stunted and don't grow up until you deal with it properly.
I agree with you.
That's why in my books and in some of the pictures you'll see big me and little me.
Yeah.
And big me helps little me heal. But that's the biggest thing. You have to believe them. And I also think teach your children good touching and bad touching, not good people. You know, when I grew up, it was all stranger danger.
Same.
And
even
something
in the
very
80s.
interesting that happened to me when I was in grade 2 was I was walking to school with my twin sister, and the school gave us the tools to deal with this. We were told there was a predator out, that his car was orangey brown, and that if he tried to approach us, we were to run away and tell an adult. Now, the school told us that. They also told us to memorise the number plate. Now, as interestingly as that is, the perpetrator tried to pick up me and my twin sister.
Oh, my goodness.
We were walking to school by ourselves, and this man pulled up next to us, opened the window, beckoned with his arm, and wanted us to go over. Well, we kept walking. We turned a corner. We turned around and walked back. I don't know. I lost count of how many times we tried to give that guy the big hint that we weren't going anywhere near his car. And he persisted. But we were cute little blonde hair, blue-eyed girls who looked the same.
Gosh.
And then opened the car door. And when he opened the car door, we were petrified. So we looked at each other. One of us memorised the letters. One of us memorised the numbers, and I don't remember who. As soon as we had memorised that, we ran home to our mother, told her, she called the police, and they got him.
Wow.
So the trouble was we weren't protected even then.
No. And that is what they taught us back then, is stranger danger and to watch out for these people, and they gave you the tools for that. But here we are. I mean, I remember my mum saying don't take lollies from strangers, and you know, and if you see a white van, whatever, and all of the things. But you're right, like this is the reason, you know, you were 7 years old getting that instruction, and we're scared to teach people or teach kids about safe and unsafe, appropriate and inappropriate behaviours and tricky behaviours and stuff like that.
And that's what we need to do more of, is what's appropriate, what's not, good touching, bad touching, because I was already being abused then. And yet,
if you had have known different, or if you had have had the opportunity.
I could say it about the stranger danger thing, but I couldn't say it about the other. And which
such
is
lost opportunities, right? Like so many lost opportunities. And I don't know what would have happened back then when you were a little girl, you know, in the early 70s, telling someone, you know, if you had have had the opportunity to tell someone that something was going on with this person. But, you know, hopefully someone would have spoken up at some stage if you had have got that opportunity.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important.
So, so important. Well, Kerri, I'm going to ask you to just tell everyone how they find your books and how they find you, because I highly recommend. I've got so many people I think that this would help. So you're Healing the Child Within on Instagram, is that right?
Yes, that's my page. You can join that and watch my book launches where I've given a speech at each one, and where I've had other advocates. I've got Cherise Hay, who's brilliant. She is a psychologist who's an advocate. She's spoken in Canberra as well. And then my books are available on Amazon. You just Google my name and it's Kerri with an I.
Kerri Sloper with an I, yep. I'll put all of the links into the show notes. And all 4 books, so there's the white canvas, the why inside, the price, and the cover up. Yep. And these books are all perfect. I mean, the cover up is probably a little bit for more on older, you know, primary school age, but I think you're right. I think that you could easily use these to help children process their own abuse, or even, you know, to teach children about the fact that these people hide in plain sight. And as kids, we wear a mask, or as people we wear a mask so that we can be safe. So thank you so much, Kerri, for coming on the Conversations with Kristi podcast and for writing these books.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for writing these books, because we need more books like this. And well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Education empowers children, strengthens parents, and most importantly, prevents abuse. That's why I do this work, and that's why you're here. So truly, thank you. If you'd like more support or resources, follow me on social media under Kristi McVie or Cape-AU, where you'll find all the links in the show notes. You can also grab a copy of my book, Operation KidSafe, A Detective's Guide to Child Abuse Prevention, at www.cape-au.com, where you'll find further resources and self-paced courses to help you in this journey of protecting your kids. If you found this episode valuable, please take a moment to leave a review or share it with someone important. Your support helps more parents and caregivers discover this important information and take action to keep kids safe. Check the show notes for extra links and support, and most importantly, thank you for showing up and taking action to protect your kids. See you next time.